I'll give you a little introduction to my background, how I ended up to becoming a professional hockey player, and then making the transition into strength and conditioning and to fitness. In case you don't know, given the accent, I'm actually from Scotland, and I lived in Scotland until I was 14 years old. And I started playing hockey, skating, and playing hockey in Scotland at that time. And then when I was about 13, 12, 13, kind of got to the point, probably where some of you guys are at, at some point in your careers where you felt like there's maybe just not the exposure or the experience. There's not that many hockey teams in Scotland. There's not that many rinks. I know you guys are mostly playing roller hockey. You'll probably find the same. There's not that much competition and games and experience you can get. So my family and myself made the decision where I was going to move to Canada. And I went to a hockey school in Saskatchewan called Notre Dame. And I went there for 1 year and traveled all the way away from home and went to school there, played hockey there, and stayed there for 1 year. And then came back to Scotland for the summer. And then from there, I think I had a bit of a decision to make whether to continue this journey and to continue my passion of hockey or to come back and play in Scotland. But as some of you guys know, the hockey in Scotland and in the UK it's progressed a little bit in the last 15, 20 years, but back then there just wasn't the exposure in the competition. So I made the decision to go back again. And as I moved up the levels as a teenager from 15, 16, 17, staying with families, traveling to different places, I had the opportunity to play in a lot of different teams, a lot of different places in Canada. And it wasn't really until I went to the United States when I was 18 years old and I went to Cleveland, Ohio, that I had the opportunity to sort of take my game to the next level. And that's where I really found that things got a lot more serious. And it was the late 90s. So for you guys, it was a long time ago. Probably a lot of your parents maybe remember, or some of the older guys on here. There was no internet or no exposure to YouTube or to look up information. There was definitely no webinars or places to find information like we're going to talk about tonight. So you just had to sort of wing it. You had to get experience from other players, from people that came before you, from your coaches, and you really had to listen to a lot of the information that was out there. And then I played a couple of years in Cleveland, and then after that was drafted to the NHL with the Flyers, and I was able to attend a couple of training camps while at the same time following on with my studies, where I got a scholarship to the University of Maine, where I ended up playing for 3 years. So, the college experience is a lot different. That's when things really got taken to another level beyond junior, where they're starting to monitor your progress, not only on the ice, but off the ice with your training. And as we're going to talk about with our training tonight, things really get taken to another level. I think when I went to college, I weighed about 155 pounds. So not pretty light, pretty slight build. And all of a sudden you're playing against players that are 4 or 5 years older and 40, 50, 60 pounds heavier than you. So of course, training becomes, the forefront of what you need to do to be able to not only compete at that level, but considering getting to the next level. So after, pretty successful 3 years at Maine, when we played in 2 national championship games, losing both. I don't know if anyone's ever lost in 2 national championship games, but I was very fortunate for the experience to be able to make it that far and experience everything that I did there. When we get into more of the strength and conditioning side of things, we'll talk about the frequency and also about some of the things you want to focus on when you are doing your training. Then from there, I was able to play a couple of years professional in the East Coast Hockey League. Wasn't able to sign a contract for the Flyers. I actually went on a free agent tryout with San Jose Sharks. So I played in the rookie tournament out in California. I played for the Sharks. There was Anaheim was there, Los Angeles, and Phoenix at the time, so Arizona. 4-team tournament. Some of the players that were involved in that were Ryan Getzlaff, Corey Perry, George Peros. I'm trying to think, just huge name drops here. But a lot of guys kind of from back then. So a lot of you guys probably weren't born then. This would have been back in 2004. So I tried to played a couple years in the East Coast League, as I said. And it's a tough to try and make it to the next level. There's players from every part of the world coming now, from all over Europe, from all over North America, from junior leagues, from from college leagues, to try and make it into the top of this pyramid. And as you get to more of the top of the pyramid, the things get filtered off. The guys who haven't trained as hard, the guys who haven't prepared as well, the guys that aren't eating as well. So as you get closer to the top, a lot of you guys that have played for Ireland already, the international level, you'll see the players that aren't committing themselves to the game, no matter what their age are, start to fall off. And then all of a sudden there's less and less and less players. And I think when I went to the Sharks camp, there was about 20 players at that camp for, I think, one contract spot. So as you can see, by the time you get to that end spot, there it really gets nestled down to not a lot of opportunities where you really have to show your stuff. So this is when the strength and conditioning, nutrition side really comes into play. So that's when I made my way over to Northern Ireland, where a lot of you guys are from, both north and south. And I was able to play for the Giants back in 2005. And my first year over here, we managed to win the league. And I played with Theo Fleury. You guys might have heard of him, a decent player back in the day, probably before some of you guys were born. But I was able to play over here that year. And then I decided after that year, after a successful year, to try and give North America another shout. So I went back over to Canada and began to train a bit more over there, and also to try and play in the East Coast League and move up to the American Hockey League. But it was at that time that I really found a little bit more of a love for strength and conditioning. I think if you're playing hockey or a sport and you don't love the training aspect of it, then I think there's something missing. You got to be loving every aspect. I know there's some parts of training, and there's probably some parts of hockey that you guys don't enjoy, whether it's a skating drill or whether it's usually something you don't like. Those are the things you don't enjoy. But those are the things that you have to really focus on. But at that time, I could really see that strength and conditioning and power and speed was really becoming a big part of the game. And as a smaller player, I found that I really needed to focus on that. I mean, going back to when I was 10, 11, 12 years old in Scotland, and even all the way up through junior, I would shoot pucks and work on skills all day long. But now I think if you watch on TV, you can see there's not any players. If you guys are watching NHL tonight when it starts, there's no players out there that are only good at shooting pucks. They can all skate, they can all pass, they can all hit, they can all back check. Yeah, some will be stronger at certain aspects, but there's no one out there anymore that can only just shoot or just skate. I think it takes almost a full package. And by focusing on your strength and your nutrition and everything that goes into it, it's not only going to help you make you a better player, a better teammate, but it's going to help you down the road in your life too. So I made my way back to Canada, North America. I was living out in California, right in Venice Beach, and there was a trainer out there called T.R. Goodman, and he worked with a lot of NHL players. And I was training out there with a lot of those guys, and I really started to watch how they trained and also, watch how the coaches trained those guys and just their attitude and how seriously took it. And they knew when they got to the gym or got to the training facility that was their time, and it was an hour and a half. And yes, they were smiling and they were enjoying it, but it was time to put the work in. So that's where I found a little bit of a love for it and started watching those guys. And then in 2008, I made my way back to Belfast, where I've lived pretty much since 2008. And I took that experience of that I gained in California, also picking up certifications and training, personal training certificates and things on the way. And I started to work with some of the players over here. A lot of the youth athletes for the Giants, a lot of the younger guys, and then also a lot of the professional players that played for the Giants started staying here in the summer. If you guys follow the Giants, guys like Mark Garside, Stephen Murphy, Dave Phillips, Craig Peacock, a lot of the British guys, and then even some of the imports, even Coach Adam Keefe and some of those other guys that would stay on, Matt Toe, the list goes on. I would start to work with those guys and started to train them. And it almost got to the point where other people were asking me if I wanted to train them. So a bit of a decision to make. I still wanted to play hockey. It was still a passion of mine. I still was only around, early 30s. Which, in some sports is getting older, but I felt like I was still in good shape, took care of my body. And I felt like this was something that I wanted to progress into. But I did have a bit of a decision to make, because do I focus more on the training and working as a personal trainer and strength and conditioning coach, or do I manage to still play hockey? So I had to try and do both. So it's very tricky, and it's not really advised to do both. But I thought at the start I was able to just do it in the summer. So it started out quite well, where we had good training groups. We had a lot of youth athletes. And then all of a sudden the season would start. And then I tried to back it off and maybe only do it one afternoon or two afternoons a week. But then it just got to the point where, from a business standpoint, I had to kind of strike where the iron was hot and make a decision of what I wanted to do after hockey. And it was looking like the training was going well, and I was renting a space at a smaller gym. But I was working with a lot of youth athletes, people from different sports. And now I started to work with general population clients, people who were not athletes, that were just looking to lose weight or tone up. And that's when things started to really take off as far as my gym and the training side of things. So I opened my own facility. Some of you guys have been there, James, and I think David Sally may be on here as well. Some of those guys have been to my gym. And it really is an athlete-based gym. I mean, we are training youth athletes, we've trained professional athletes, Belfast Giants, Irish women's field hockey, silver medal at the World Championships, and going on to the Olympics now. So it really is an athlete-style gym, and we're training general population clients like athletes. Obviously, the exercises and things are a little bit different, but that's what everybody wants. You people want to look like athletes. They want to train like athletes, but obviously you have to adjust things to suit their fitness level. And then recently, since I retired about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I started personally getting into golf more. So I've adjusted my training a little bit more for a lot more mobility, a little bit more golf-based power. And then also I've started working with a lot of golf athletes too, because the training is very similar to what you would do with a hockey player, with a roller hockey player, with a golfer. It's all about power, speed, and mobility and all that stuff. So yeah, so since then, that's currently where I'm at. Probably a little bit long-winded background on myself, but and of course the gym is closed right now, which is tough for everybody. We'll get into some stuff that you can do at home in a little minute here too, but I'm sure it's tough for you guys if you are sitting at home and feeling a little bit stuck of what to do. But I'll give you some ideas, and we'll also, after this, I'll remember, Michael, what I'm going to do is I'll put together an email or a Word document with all the key points from what I'm talking about here, and then you guys can follow up on it, and I'll put some links in there for some nutrition links, maybe like a PDF file with some nutrition stuff, and also some exercises which you guys can kind of focus on. And if you have any questions, I'll put my email address on that too, and you guys can just shoot me any questions if there is any stuff about the exercises, or yeah, anything you want, if in case you're just maybe a bit too nervous to ask any questions at the end. But I think when it comes to the training side of things, there's no better time than the present. And I think if you are stuck at home and you think I can't train, then I think that's a pile of rubbish. If you have a body and you don't even need weight, you can use your own body weight for training. I think there's things you need to do every day, and then there's the things you need to do maybe a couple times a week. As far as the training goes, there's sort of four main areas of training that I would see, and those would be mobility. Mobility can be stretching, it can be active mobility, sort of joint mobility. There would be strength training, speed training, and then conditioning. Okay, so if you're taking notes, don't worry, I can always send you this too, but if you want to take notes too, but if you want to maybe just, if you have any questions, you can write those down, you can ask again. Mobility, for the younger guys or girls on this call, you guys are going to be all limber. You're going to be able to get in all different positions. Your joints are going to be nice and mobile. Everything's moving the way it should. The joints are all nice and loose. But as you get older, retired hockey player myself, older gentlemen like James Glover, the joints are going to start to get a little stiffer, and they're not going to move the way they should. Sitting behind your computer, hunched over, sitting on your phone, things are going to start tightening up in ways that aren't going to feel too good. Okay, so if you have good mobility in your hips, it doesn't mean you're always going to have good mobility in your hips. You're going to have to keep working on it. Obviously, when you're younger, where you want to focus on more strength and speed, we'll get into that in a second. And as you get older, you're probably not going to be able to get that much stronger. You can always get a little bit stronger, but as you get older, to my age, I'm probably about as strong as I'm going to be, and I just want to try and maintain that. Whereas I'm going to want to focus on more on my mobility and making sure when I get up in the morning that my hips and my back and everything else isn't sore. Okay, so mobility is something I think you should do every day. And if you guys have a little stretching routine, that's fantastic. I can also send you some stretching routines. I'm not going to get down on the floor, but we have our own YouTube channel, which has got some stretching routines on there. It's completely free. You guys can go on there and follow along. and also do some Facebook Live and lots of different links to some stuff on there. So I think for mobility, the older you are, you want to be focused on that every day. The next aspect would be strength training. As I said, I don't think you can ever be strong enough, but there probably is a point where you get to my age or James's age or some of the older gentlemen on here where you probably have as much strength or as strong as you're going to get. So you want to focus on just maintaining that strength. For the younger guys, you're probably going to just want to try and get as strong as possible. Because if you want to be fast, you have to be strong. If you want to be quick, you still have to be strong. So if you, right now, it's a little bit more difficult, as we just said, but you want to be trying to strength train a couple times a week, 2 to 3 times a week. If you want to try and strength train every day, that's pretty good, but you might probably gas yourself out. You probably want to focus on doing, if you feel like you've got lots of time and you can strength train 3 to 4 times a week, that's great, but try and focus on quality over quantity. You're always going to make sure your technique is what you focus on the most. Okay, and then as far as the strength training goes, you want to go full body strength training. You don't want to just be all arms and upper body, because there's an old saying that you can't shoot a cannon from a canoe. So you don't want to have a big upper body and then these little skinny legs at the bottom, okay? Because you're not going to skate very fast. So you want to think full body. You're going to do upper body, core, and lower body. The legs are the engine that drives everything. So you're going to want to have nice, strong legs. Again, I'll be able to link you some exercises and to give you a little bit of an idea to see if you haven't done any stuff, some basic stuff to do it, and then if you've got some questions on where you're at right now and where you want to take things to. As far as training for performance to training for aesthetics meaning looking good in the mirror, you have a little bit of a decision to make. Do you want to just look good with the sleeves cut off your shirt and flex in the mirror? Or do you want to be a good athlete and be able to skate fast and shoot pucks hard? There is a little bit of difference. You will still look and feel better if you train for performance, but there's a difference between, looking good with your shirt off and all that stuff. So there you go. So you've got mobility every day. You've got strength training anywhere between 2 and 4 times a week. And then the next aspect of training is going to be speed training. Now, it'd be great if I could get some feedback at this time, but at the end, what we'll do is we'll try and do a little bit more interactive, and maybe Michael can ask questions, or we can kind of make it interactive if people have questions. So speed training, I'm sure you can maybe nod or just agree, but I know you guys probably watch all those videos on YouTube where the people are running through the ladders like really, really fast, and their feet are moving 1,000,000 miles an hour. And then I'm sure you've seen the it's a Lord of the Dance. You got a Lord of the Dance? Yeah? No? Yeah, and the guy's feet are moving really fast. So there's a little bit of a myth between that, because power and speed and power is how much force you can apply into the ground. So if you look at Usain Bolt, he doesn't start on the in the blocks and the 100 meters, and he doesn't move his feet like he takes big, massive, powerful strides, and he gets as far with each push as he can. So you want to think about that. Yes, in hockey and skating, you have to have quick feet, but you don't want to be just moving your feet 1,000,000 miles an hour and not going anywhere. So when you're training for speed, if you want to run fast, run fast. If you want to skate fast, you got to skate fast. Like if you want to be a fast skater, yes, doing 800 laps of the rink is going to probably help with your slow conditioning and cardio, but it's not going to make you faster. If you want to be faster on the ice or on the court, you got to sprint. And the number one thing to help speed on the ice is obviously, or on the ice or the court, would be to sprint on the ice. Okay, along with working on strength, because you have to be strong to be fast. But the number one thing off the ice you can do to be faster, along with being strong, is to run fast. So 100% all out sprints. And I would say the furthest you want to go, you want to focus on the 10 to 40 meter length. Anything longer than that, you start to get into some different stuff. But I would think when you're playing a match or a game, how big the court is or how big the ice is. It's all about those first, you're always maybe cruising around, and it's short bursts, 3 or 4 strides, 5 strides at the most. Think of during a match. I know in ice hockey, how many times do you see someone You know, Connor McDavid maybe winds it up a little bit and he gets some full speed going. But even then, there's not full out 100% like lap of the rink speed. It's all about short bursts and sprints. So when you're working on speed, a good example would be if you were doing your training, even right now, if you have a driveway or a street, you go out and you maybe cone off, say 30 yards, 30 meters, and you would work on full out 30 meters. So you'd sprint 30 meters, you'd walk yourself back, catch your breath. So it's probably going to take you 5 seconds to run 30 meters. Then you maybe want to rest for the rest of, take about a minute, 45 seconds. By the time you get back, boom, run your 30 meters. Okay. And you only want to be working on, it's going to be 100% effort. So if you're working on speed, there's no way you can do 30 of those, because by the time you get to the 10th one, you're not going to be able to give 100% effort because you're going to be gassed. So you want to think short. So anywhere between, if you were doing 30-meter sprints, anywhere between 5 and 8 would be probably the most I would say to go. Once you start getting over that, you know, you start working a bunch of different energy systems, which there's no point me get into right now because it's just going to bore you guys even more than this is. So that's speed. So we've got mobility almost every day, strength work anywhere between 2 and 4 times a day. I would try and sprint, whether it's on the court, on the ice. If you're doing lots of training as far as on the ice and on the court, you can still do sprints off the ice, but maybe back it off a little bit. But if you're doing work right now in the gym or at home and you're doing your sprints, I would sprint probably 2 to 3 times a week as well. So I would sprint on the days you do your strength work. And then the last part of it would be your conditioning as far as strength goes. So conditioning, you've got a bunch of different energy systems, aerobic, anaerobic, alactic. You're trying to tick a little bit of each box. Okay, so you're probably on the court or on the rink. You're not going to train like a marathon runner, but you're also not going to train primarily just like a sprinter. You have to check off a little bit of each. So you want to be doing a little bit of long distance stuff, but not too much. You want to do a little bit of interval work. And then, as I said, you want to do a little bit of sprinting. Interval work is probably going to be your best bet, your best bang for your buck as far as conditioning wise for on the court and on the ice. But I do think you have to do a little bit of aerobic work as well. Interval work would be a little bit more based towards the fast twitch fibers as well, like we're talking about with our sprinting. And then the long, slow cardio would be a little bit more slow twitch. So if you want to train to be slow, run slow. If you want to train to be fast, run fast. Okay. And you just have to try and find that balance. I'll give you a little bit more, in a little bit more of a file, which will give you a little bit more of an idea. That way you guys can take a little bit more of this in and you can look at it. And then just to go back to the strength work as well, there is another aspect which I didn't really touch on as far as working on power. So when I say strength, power is a combination of speed and strength. So things like jumping, you'll see a lot of people jumping onto boxes or doing single leg bounces or bounds, jumping over hurdles. You also want to try and do a little bit of that. It is hard to explain over this how much to do of that. But again, I would do that 2 to 3 to 4 times a week. So I would do that with your strength and your speed work and some power work as well. And then as far as that stuff goes, there is a limit to how much is too much. If you feel gassed and you feel tired on certain things, then take a little rest and then start again. Different if you're pushing yourself on your conditioning, but if you feel like you're throwing up every time you're working out, then you're probably doing too much. And if you feel like you're not breaking a sweat, then you're probably not doing enough. So it's just trying to find that balance of what is enough and what's not too much. Okay. So we'll go into, so that's kind of the strength and conditioning side of things. Now we'll talk a little bit about nutrition. You guys, I can see by the boxes, most of you guys are pretty young. There's a few older guys in here too. Yeah, Dave's a little bit older. So nutrition can be very complicated, but can also be very simple. Most of you guys, from what I can see from the pictures, are athletic. They're pretty lean, and it's probably a matter of eating more of the right things. I'm guessing most guys and girls in here like sweets, who like sugary drinks. I was young once too. I enjoyed all those things. But also when you're having those things, it's keeping you from getting enough good calories into you. So for the younger guys, you're probably wanting to just eat more good things and less bad. I like to say the 80-20 rule. So 80% good things and 20% not so good things. I know it doesn't work out 80%, 20%, but sometimes you could go Monday to Friday and just try and keep it pretty clean there, and then just let it go on the weekend. Okay. We could talk a lot about protein and carbs and fats, but I think for most people, you're trying to just get more protein in. I can probably guarantee most people in here and most people that are struggling with either putting on weight or losing weight are probably not getting enough protein. So I'm sure you've all seen that plate at school, and it's got the little bit in the corner with your greens, it's got a little bit in the corner with your protein, and it's got a big full side with the carbs. So the big bit with the potatoes and a tiny bit of meat and a tiny bit of greens. You want to think get more protein and more greens, and then back off the carbs. So carbs would be carbs would be pasta, potatoes, bread, rice, all that stuff. And I'm not saying you can't eat that stuff. I'm just saying try to get more protein and more greens. The old 3 meals a day, good example to use. Breakfast, probably most people probably aren't eating enough of the right things for breakfast and lunch. So again, breakfast, good proteins to have for breakfast would be eggs. Try eggs, porridge, oats, along those lines, and try and stay away from cereal, especially the white sugary cereal, Rice Krispies, cornflakes, all that stuff. There's just not really the nutrition value in there. Yeah, you guys, Pop-Tarts definitely no good. I'm trying to think what other rubbish cereal there's in breakfast stuff, but so try and think, especially if you're home right now, experiment, speak to your mom and dad, whoever you stay with, try and experiment with your breakfast, try and get a bit more calories in, get some eggs if you like eggs, even some different meat. There's nothing super wrong with having bacon or sausages. You just got to try and limit how much of those things you have. And then of course, if you're having toast or bread, try and go with the brown bread or the whole wheat as opposed to the cardboardy white bread. Okay. And then there's a few other things we can talk about as far as fat goes, but that's a bit more in detail. The things I'd say you want to stay away from would be sugary drinks. Just try and limit your sweets. If you normally have I don't know, 2 packets of crisps a day and 2 chocolate bars, just try and limit it to 1 chocolate bar a day or 1 packet of crisps. Or if you'd have 4 cans of Coke a day, try and just have 1. Just try and eliminate little things in there, and then try and find a supplement or something else you can have instead of having those sugary drinks and sugary sweets. It is tough and it's not easy, but you got to think this is stuff that's going to help not only your performance on the court or on the ice, but it's going to help you later on in life too. Okay. The biggest thing I would say probably with eating is just try and eat like an adult. I know some of you guys are pretty young in here, but try not to eat like a 10-year-old. If you look at kids, they eat like, there's probably a few 10-year-olds in here, but you can still eat like a kid, which is fine, but just try and limit the amount of rubbish that you're having and try and get a bit more substance in there. Because some of you guys are probably pretty scrawny and you're like, oh, I wish I could get stronger or bigger or put on more weight. Well, eat more decent food, I guess, would be the example to use, and try and eliminate some of the other stuff. Okay, so as far as lifestyle, the last part where I go into is probably lifestyle. The biggest thing about lifestyle, especially right now, you guys are probably getting too much sleep. I have on here try and get at least 8 hours sleep, but everyone's probably sleeping in anyway because some of you guys are probably in school, but if you guys don't have school, you don't have to go to school, you're probably sleeping a bit too much. But try and get to bed at a decent time, and you want to get at least, the younger you are, the more sleep you're gonna need. But somewhere in that 8 to 10 hours is probably going to be good. But that doesn't mean from 2 a.m. till noon or 2 a.m. till 11. You got to try and get to bed definitely before midnight. If you guys are staying up late playing video games, and just try and control the amount of stuff that you're doing with that. Try and stay off your phone a little bit. I know everything is on your phone, everything's on the line, but just try and focus on make sure you get enough rest and enough recovery. And then that means you're going to be able to eat better. You're going to feel better the next day. and you're going to get enough recovery for when it comes on to your training. The other thing I would just say when I was talking about drinks is just drinking water a little bit more. If you do find that you don't drink any water, I mean, I was your age. I grew up in Scotland in the early 90s. So water was like, what do you get people drinking water for when there's Iron Brew and Coca-Cola here? Just have an Iron Brew instead. It's got water in it. But realistically speaking, we know a lot more now than we did back then. So just try and drink water. If you feel like, oh, I don't like water, well, just start with pouring a glass of water and putting it in your kitchen, especially if you're home right now. Pour 1 glass of water, and that's your goal. If you don't drink any water, put 1 glass of water in your kitchen, and then your goal is to just finish that 1 glass by the end of the day. Because I know people come to the gym and like, I don't like drinking water. It doesn't taste like, or whatever. I just don't like it. So you start with 1 glass, and then all of a sudden you find you finish that glass by lunchtime, and all of a sudden, okay, refill it, try and drink it again, and then all of a sudden you're getting now. I mean, depending on your age, you might be looking at trying to drink anywhere between 2 and 4 liters of water a day, especially if you're training and doing a lot of activity as well. I'm sure your parents are probably like, where's he getting all this water from? But that would kind of be most of the training, nutrition and lifestyle thing, if we're keeping it pretty broad as far as the topics. I will try and give you some bullet points. I'll work on that tomorrow, and then I can send it through with some links to some exercises and some ideas of how to balance your training out. The other thing I would say, looking back on to how I got to where to accomplish what I did with hockey and also with training, is using the time you have now. Like if you're limited where you live in an apartment, just try and work on what you can work on in that area. So if you're in an apartment and all you have is body weight and you have a stick and you have a tennis ball, perfect. You can work on body weight exercise. You can work on stick handling. You can work on different little drills. I mean, I'm sure everyone has YouTube. There's a trillion different exercises or different stick handling drills on there. So that's great. You can work on that. If you have a driveway with a net, all of a sudden now you can work on shooting. You can work on stick handling through cones. You can work on different things. If you have rollerblades, now you can do a little bit more. But you have to just think, if you want to be a hockey player, if you want to be better at roller hockey, ice hockey, you have to put in the time. There's just no shortcut for being better. There's no shortcut to make it to Team Ireland. There's no shortcut to make it to the Belfast Giants. You have to put in the time, and you have to enjoy what you're doing. And I'm not saying if you don't enjoy it, don't do it, but you have to find a way where even if you're doing something and it hurts, then you have to think about your goals. Think about, okay, this is hurting right now, but it's going to be paying off when it comes to a game, and I'm going to be in better shape and I'm going to feel better. I'm going to practice hitting the top corner 500 times, because when it gets to the game, I'm going to get that one chance and that M&M's time, that one opportunity, and it's going to pay off. Because the amount of times, if you looked at my professional career or Great Britain career, for the amount of goals that I scored or didn't score, the amount of times that I practiced a certain shot was probably 100, 500, 1,000 times more than the time it actually paid off. Because it's just about repetition. And sometimes it does seem boring. That's what I said. You have to make it fun. If you have some friends that you're playing with, if you have a brother, if you have music, if you have targets, if you're videoing yourself for your YouTube channel or your Instagram, just make it into competition. Just try and make it a bit more entertaining, because the basics are boring, but the basics are the things that pay off. Just repetition of the same things, making that pass, making that breakout pass, making that shot, making that backhand. No one likes working on their backhand because it's boring. You can't shoot on the backhand as hard as you can hit a slap shot. So why do work on that? Just hit 8,000 slap shots all the time. But in a game, when the puck's on your backhand and you have a chance to score, you're going to want to take advantage of it. So that's why you see videos of Sidney Crosby and those guys, and they're just zinging backhands, and there's so many. And not to rip on certain internet successes, but you see a few guys doing the Michigan when they pick the puck up and score. But I mean, how many goals did you see like that last year? 1, 2 goals like that last year? But how many other goals did you see where a guy had a guy hanging off him and he's on one leg and he pulls it to his backhand and puts it in the net? You see, hundreds of goals like that, because It's the basics that get the job done, and the basics that are going to make you successful. So yeah, you can work on little tricks and all that stuff, and that's all going to help. But just got to keep working on those shots and those stick handling. And I said that's the stuff that's just gonna pay off for you. What I'll do, Michael, now is I'll go through the questions that you sent me, and then if hopefully people have some questions or some feedback, and then we can maybe make it a little bit more interactive for as long as it takes. I'm not in any rush written, so feel free to ask as many questions after I go through the ones that you sent me. Yeah, and then hopefully you guys enjoyed some of that stuff. I know it's tough on here when someone's just rambling on about nutrition and training and along those lines. But what I'll do is I think someone sent me a question there, but that's okay. But I'll answer these ones, and then I'll email you something, Michael, where people can follow along, and then they have some workout ideas, and they can also email if they have questions about the workouts.
All sounds good. Yeah, there's a few have written in the chat already.
Yeah, great. So I'll go through the ones.
If anyone else,
I'll go through the ones.
If anyone else has questions as well, write in the chat. We can either unmute you or just write in the chat as well.
I'll let you figure out how you're going to answer, how people are going to get picked if they want to ask a question. But so the questions you sent me before were hip mobility. So as I was saying, for hip mobility, people feel you're obviously sitting in chairs, so your hip flexors are shortened. So you're sitting down a lot. You're really tight. You're maybe skating. You're in a bent over position all the time. Your legs are flexed at the hip. So there's a few different stretches. There's a good hip flexor stretch. So I'll send you links to these later or tomorrow, and you'll be able to go through those. So you want to focus on those. And as I said, when you're working on your mobility, the biggest thing when stretching or working mobility is just to have a bit of intent with your stretching. Because I think you'll see a lot of people, they're stretching, they're just going to stretch my arm across here. And they're like, I'm stretching my arm. Or like, that's, an example. But you got to have a bit of intent. Like if you want to increase the range of motion in a joint and stretch it to the point where it can move more freely, you have to push that joint to not a limit beyond, but you got to stretch it a little bit further than probably where it's at the current moment. It's like a rubber band. I don't have a rubber band here. If you take a rubber band and you just stretch it out and then let go, it'll go right back to the position it was in. If you take a rubber band, not stretch it, not to the point where it's going to snap, but you stretch it pretty good, we'll say, and then you hold it there for 30 seconds, a minute. When it goes back, it's probably not going to go back to the same position. So you got to think about that with stretching. You don't want to stretch to the point where your muscles are going to snap or your tendons are going to snap or your ligaments, but you got to create a little bit more tension. It's almost like yoga where they're holding the poses quite a lot longer. So I'll link you a few different exercises for hip mobility. The other things for calories or protein after exercise, so after games. Yeah, I think it's very important right after games because protein really helps with recovery, really helps with muscle recovery and energy, all the energy that you've used up in that game, you're really depleted. So it's good to get protein in because it's going to help those cells recover faster. So it's important to get it in almost right away. You'll see if you watch NHL games, you'll see the guys in the locker rooms right after. Sometimes in between periods, they're drinking some sort of protein shake or amino acids just to help aid recovery. So yeah, I would say try and get it as soon as after as possible. And then later on, maybe after the game or after training, you're going to want to get a good mix of protein, carbs, and fat in a meal just to help aid recovery as well, because you're going to be pretty depleted, especially if you haven't eaten in a while since before the game. It is important to get that in. When I played for the Giants, you'd see guys after with the protein shakes, and then we'd get meals provided with usually pasta or chicken or some sort of rice after the game. I think that's important to do. Of course, depending if we were playing away from home or at home, a meal after the game could be a pizza, but I think at that point it's important to just get something in. I wouldn't say a Big Mac and fries would be the best, but something is almost better than nothing. I mean, a Big Mac and fries is better than a Snickers and a packet of crisps, but I wouldn't go as far as saying a Snickers and a packet of crisps. But if you can get a pizza is better than a Big Mac and fries, and then obviously, of course, pasta or chicken or a wrap or something along those lines would be better than the previous two. Someone said if they're a vegetarian, what about supplements? Yeah, I think it's just trying to get, again, protein is usually the hardest thing to get into because, you know, you take a regular chicken breast can be anywhere between 20 to 30 grams of protein. If you're going on a high protein diet, possibly, you know, you want to maybe get like 1 gram of protein per kilo, or even 1.5 per kilo. So, you know, that's a lot of chicken breasts throughout the day. So, and if you're a vegetarian, that's a lot of beans or tofu or some other protein source that you're trying to supplement for chicken. It's a lot easier to eat a chicken breast for 30 grams than it is a massive bowl of beans, not baked beans, but, you know, like a kidney bean or something, to try and get that. So there is some good vegetarian protein supplements, which if you go to, I usually use myprotein.com. That's not My Protein, it's the website My Protein. They usually have lots of different options, and you can go on the menu there and you can go for training, recovery, weight loss, weight gain. So it's pretty easy to follow it, and usually you can't go wrong on there. Again, if you have any questions with that, don't hesitate to shoot me a message on an email, and I can help guide you in the right direction as far as that goes. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with being vegetarian or vegan, but I would say it is just going to be hard to get. There's lots of carbohydrates, obviously, that aren't made from animal parts, fats, etc. But there's not as much protein. It's harder to get. It takes a lot more beans or, you know, protein source than it would to get protein in than it would to take a chicken breast or a steak. Performance tracking. I wasn't sure if you meant performance tracking as far as games or practices or nutrition or training. So a few different ones we would use. A really less expensive one would be a polar heart rate monitor. Those are good for your own training. Once you get into heart rate monitoring and adjusting your training due to that, it's a little bit more advanced, but you can see roughly how many calories you're burning. You can track your heart rate. As far as for interval training, it's very good. And as well, if you're running and things, it's good for tracking the different distances and just to see how, you know, how your heart rate is recovering. Recovery rates is probably the thing I would focus on most there. That's a little bit more complicated for some of the younger guys, but you know, you're thinking about more how fast you're going to recover. So if I was to do my 30-meter sprint, how fast is it going to take my heart rate to come back down from, say, 150 beats per minute to I don't know, say 90 beats per minute? Like, how long is it going to take? Is it going to take 30 seconds? Is it going to take 45? And your goal should be making that window less and less and less, as far as your heart is going to recover back to normal. It'd be like sprinting on the ice or on the court. How fast you're going to be able to recover. So that's something you can work on. A little bit more expensive one would be MyZone. It's a little bit more advanced, maybe gives you a little bit more feedback. And then some of the gyms would have the monitors in the gym. And you can use those as well. And you can also track some nutrition stuff on there. A good nutrition one would be the Under Armour one, MyFitnessPal. It's quite good. It's free for the most part for the basic version. And you can put in there any meal or any thing that you drink or eat. And it's got pretty much like 4 million different items in there. So if you have, I'm using bad food as an example, but if you have a Twix, I'll have a Twix in there and you can put that in there. And that'll give you your exact calories. So you can track your calories for the day. And it'll show how many, if you put your body weight in there and your height and age, it'll give you a good idea, a rough estimate of how much you should be eating, if, you know, depending if you want to put on weight or try and lose weight, you know, over the course of your training, whether it's in summer or in season. So, but yeah, I think that was the questions that you guys had written in for email, but I think I can see maybe you guys have lots more. Do you want to fire those at me, Michael, or do you want people type them in, or?
Yeah, so we'll start the ones in the chat and then we'll go around to see if anyone else has any. So, like, what is your position on nutritional supplementation in sort of junior players as young as 10?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not completely against it. I wouldn't be a big fan of, I'm going to do this, pre-workout stuff. You know, I would really stay away from Red Bulls. I would stay away from Monsters, all that stuff. I think I think your pre-workout motivation and energy should be sleep, hydration, and better nutrition. I don't think if you feel like you need to have a Monster or Red Bull to get ready for a practice or a game or a workout, then I think you need to look at some other aspects. As far as for like a protein supplement or even vitamins, 10's pretty young. But I mean, if you're 10, you probably just need to, as I say, you need to focus on eating a bit more substance, a bit more larger meals and snacks on the good side. And then just try and stay away from more of the junk, say like sugary snacks and drinks.
And then we have one from James Glover. Can you give us an idea of how GB approach a World Championship, training, the build up to tournament, daily routines, recovery, etc.?
That was GB. You said GB, yeah.
GB, yeah.
Yeah. So that I'm not sure how you guys' schedule works, but the Great Britain schedule would be quite intense because it would be after, say, if I played for the Giants or another team in the Elite League, we were already played 70, 80 games right before the World Championship would start. So you're already probably peaked your season towards, after Christmas time, that playoff run. You're looking to really try and peak to the point where you're maintaining, just trying to keep your body in one piece. We are trying to limit the injuries and increase your recovery as much as possible and not get injured. And then all of a sudden, after the playoffs, you reach this peak as far as your own season goes. And then you have to try and refocus and all of a sudden prepare for a tournament, which is going to be 2 weeks long. So it is quite a bit of an adjustment. I would say the last 5 years of my career, I really changed the focus on my training off the ice, which I think really helped with the GB side of things, where I really started to focus on continuing my training throughout the season. Early on in my career, I would really train really hard off the ice till about Christmas, and then I really back it off. And at that point, I felt like that was the right thing to do. But then as I got older, I found that once you got into like February and March, not my conditioning, but my strength and recovery would really tail off. So I felt like it was more beneficial to keep training. You obviously have to adjust things, the volume and how often and how much you're doing, so you're not gassing yourself out. But I found if I kept training right through the end of the season, when it got to the GB side of things, I felt a lot fresher and stronger. As far as on the ice goes, it would be very intense. We would, you might be done the Elite League playoffs on a Sunday, be able to come back to Belfast for a day, and then have to go back on the Tuesday to start a training camp right away for maybe 2 weeks. And then we'd have a pretty intense, almost once or twice a day on the ice, and then 2 or 4 exhibition games and right into the tournament after that. So it is quite intense. As far as the practices wouldn't be the same intensity as maybe a regular season practice, which in my opinion and from experience, I think the longer the training sessions are, I think with the lower intensity, I think you'll find, as maybe probably you guys know, if you have a long practice where you're doing like slow stuff and the coach is explaining stuff, even after that, if they're like, oh, this is an easy practice and it took 2 hours, after it, you're like, I feel terrible. Whereas if you have a practice that's 50 minutes, an hour, and it's intense and you're doing drills and you're skating up and down, you're passing, you're shooting, you're doing physical stuff, you always feel much better after that. And I find that's why I always liked shorter practices. And it's not because you don't want to practice. It's because, yeah, if you want to stay out after and work on shooting or skills, but the actual bones of the practice, I find that if they're shorter and more intense, I feel like you do feel fresher. And there's data to support that because now with all the heart rate monitoring and stuff. And then, but I find that when I was training with the GB team, I would always try and find a gym, whether it was in Coventry, Sheffield, or wherever the training camp was. I would always try and maintain my strength. As I said, I would always do mobility exercises before we go on the ice, including a warm up off the ice. But after practice or before practice, I'd always try and strength train as well if I had the facilities. Or, as I said before, you can still do body weight exercises, but I would always try and strength train to maintain through that championship as well.
Okay, so next we have Darren, who asks, how long would you recommend in terms of time per session? I guess is in relation to strength training or speed training.
I think if you looked at it Well, if you used a like a pie chart, you guys have seen those before, like a big circle, like same as the plate, the health and nutrition plate. So say you had your four corners there. So say you had your mobility, your strength, your speed, and your conditioning. So given the age or the things that you feel like you need to work on, me now, I probably would work, make the mobility slice of that pie a little bit bigger, the strength and speed ones I'd maybe make a bit smaller. And then I'd probably try and work on a little bit more conditioning as well, just given as you get older, you start to carry a little bit more weight. You're maybe not taking care of yourself as much as you did before. So I'd maybe focus a bit more on maintaining my strength and speed, but also just focus a little bit more on mobility and conditioning. My workouts right now, I would say I could probably check all of those boxes in maybe about 50 minutes, 50 minutes. When I was training for hockey, so even going back 2 summers ago, because the training is more intense and you have a little bit more you have to focus on, I would say the strength and conditioning sessions would probably take about an hour and 15 minutes. Again, stretching, foam rolling at the start of your session maybe takes, I'd say 10-15 minutes. Then the strength, power and strength portion of your workout, maybe speed training, speed and power, maybe say it takes 10-15 minutes. Your strength training maybe takes 30 minutes. So say 10-15 for mobility, say 10-15 for speed and power, and then 30 minutes for your strength work, and then say 10-15 minutes max for your conditioning. And when I say 10-15 minutes max for my conditioning, I'm going off of like an interval based work. We are maybe doing I don't know, shuttle runs. You're running back, if you have a gym or a football pitch, you're running down and back on the football pitch, takes, say, I don't know how long it takes, but say that takes a minute, maybe a bit longer. Then you're resting for 2 minutes. Then you go down and back again, resting for 2 minutes. You might say do 10 of those intervals for your training, and that might take you, say, 15 minutes. My math's probably a bit off there, but you get the idea. But I think if you're training more than an hour and 10 minutes, then you're not training very efficiently. Doing a set of squats and then sitting there for 2 minutes, 3 minutes on your phone or whatever, then I think you can make way more use out of your time. But then also I think if you're only training in like 20 minutes, you're just running around really fast and you're jumping up and down and doing all that, yeah, that may be great. But you can probably get more out of the training as far as something more specific to what you're working on.
Great. So next we have from Ivan. How do you cope with the pressure in the big games or championships?
I get that question quite a lot actually, because James will know as well. I got right into. I played golf a little bit when I was younger, and then now golf's sort of the only other sport I would play because I don't play hockey anymore. And I was, I feel more nervous over a 2-foot putt with 3 other people in my group watching than I did playing in front of 5,000 people. So I think the more I would get nervous before the big games, I would say. If you're playing in a playoff final, you get a little bit of butterflies in your stomach, but I would say it's a good nervous. I think if you're out there and you're shaking and you can't hold your stick or skate properly because you're so nervous, then I think you need to find a way to calm yourself and focus on the task at hand, and just try and block out everything else around you. Because by the time you get to that point, if you're playing the World Championships or you're playing the playoff final, what you've done in that game, you've done 10,000 times before that. So it's just a matter of, it's just another game. Yeah, there may be a few more people here watching, there may be more on the line, but you've already prepared for that the 6 months before that. So by the time you get to that game, there's nothing that's going to happen in there that you haven't seen before. I mean, maybe, nothing inside the game that you haven't seen before. You've made a breakout pass. For a goalie, you've made a save. For a player, you've had a breakaway. So it's just a matter of having that confidence and that calmness to know that you've been there before, and that you can do it again. I'm not saying I've never been nervous. Like, yeah, I've been nervous, but you just have to try and block it out and just try and focus on, having the confidence. And that if you get to that point as well, you're there for a reason. The coach knows that you can do it. The manager knows that you can do it. You've been put out there because your teammates know you can do it. So you just have to, there's a fine balance between being nervous and being freaking out, and then also being like super relaxed, like, oh, I don't care. But if you get to that point, as I said, the coaches know you care, the fans know you care, and you should know you care. So it's just a matter of going out and executing.
Okay, going a bit different direction. What did you find the hardest / easiest to build chemistry with as a teammate?
The hardest person, or the hardest thing? Just chemistry.
Just chemistry.
I think sometimes there's just players that you just seem to click with. I mean, the coaches usually, when you play with a player on a line, for example, if I was a center or a winger, you're not you're not going to the coach and saying, "Oh, I want to play with this guy." The coach is putting you with two players, or if you're a defenseman, he's putting someone else with you who he thinks is going to match your skill set. And sometimes it doesn't work out. I mean, there's players. I can't really think of any. Well, I probably could think of a few offhand, but there's players that I'll give you a few examples of players I have played with. A guy, Jeffrey Swez, Brandon Bennett, guys that I played with the Giants throughout the years. And there's just something that you just seem to click with that player. You just seem to know where they're going to be. You seem to match well with their tendencies, and it seems to be, you can never really put two players together. You see that a lot of times where it just doesn't work. Two players that have the same mentality, and they both want the puck all the time. Like Chris Higgins, for example, and then David Rutherford. Both those guys on the ice, they want to have the puck, and they want to be making the plays. And so I'm a player. I would be a bit more of a shooter towards the end of my career, but I like making plays too. But I don't care if I carry the puck up the ice into the zone and turn back and then make a pass, or I don't care if I skate down the wing and you give it to me and I shoot and score. I don't care how the puck gets into the net or how we win the game. Whatever is going to help the team win. But it just depends. Sometimes the chemistry is just there, and then sometimes the coach will lose a couple games, and all right, we're mixing all the lines up, and all of a sudden you're like, flip, I haven't played with this guy before. And then sometimes, this worked out really well. Like Steve Saviano was a guy we had for the Giants a few years ago, and I never really played with him much. The first year he was here, and we kind of went on a little bit of a bad run, and I was on, I think, the third line. And I think in 3 games we only scored 3 goals, and I scored all 3. So they said, "Oh, well," they bumped someone else off a line, and they said, "Oh, you're going to try it with that guy." And I never really played with him, and all of a sudden, like from the first game, it just clicked. He's a guy that likes to get the puck. He likes to beat guys, and then all of a sudden set you up. And I was a guy at that point who was good at finding the open spaces and then making the shot. So it is a weird one to figure out, but it seems to be. Sometimes it just happens, and sometimes it definitely doesn't.
So, from Ben, who was your favorite hockey player growing up, and why?
I mean, when I grew up, there's probably a lot. Well, when I grew up, the big players were like Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier and those guys, and the Edmonton, a little bit after the Edmonton Oilers, but sort of in that mid-90s. There's lots of guys like Pavel Bure. You guys probably don't know any of these players, but there's the guy who played for Detroit. His name was Steve Yzerman, and he wore number 19. And he was a smaller player, and earlier on in his career was a big point scorer, right-hand shot. And I always liked his game. I thought he really transferred nicely from being a really, really offensive player to an all-around solid player towards the end of his career. And he just seemed like a player that everyone looked up to, and he was one I always liked.
Certainly was a great player. From Karen, is there any difference for women versus men in terms of training, eating, etc.?
Yes and no. I mean, I would say still for female athlete, you still want to have good strength, you still want to have speed, you still want to be well conditioned, and you still want to be powerful. There is a few things like in generally speaking, females would have a bit better mobility than men. I would say for females, really want to focus on single leg strength. For all our athletes, we like to focus on single leg strength. That because women would have a little bit more active joints, you kind of want to focus on single leg. exercises, especially to help protect your knees and hips. But as far as the strength training goes, yeah, I mean, females can always get stronger if you don't follow a lot of the Mike Boyle stuff and the U.S. women's national team hockey team stuff. There's a lot of good strength training stuff that they do, and it just shows you that females can be really strong as well, and it's going to help them with their training. Nutrition wise, yeah, I wouldn't say there's a ton different. I would say just just watch the calories and try and focus on, again, just focus on the good stuff and try and stay away from the bad stuff as well. I wouldn't say there's a ton different there. With our female athletes, we would definitely focus on a lot of core training, a lot of upper body stuff as well, because females generally wouldn't have as strong upper bodies as men.
Okay, so from Katarina, any fun workout out ideas that are give her kids, 14-year-old, 9-year-old, and myself, the mum?
Yeah, I'm sure you were doing the Joe Wicks ones last time, but yeah, I mean, there's lots of different little body weight ones. We do lots of different games and things at the gym. But I mean, it's just trying to be creative and just trying to keep the kids engaged, whether it's different body weight exercises and stuff you can do in the garden. But just trying to make it fun. I mean, nobody wants to, but we do a lot of, if you check out our Instagram or Facebook page, or Reese Gilfillan that works for us, he would train a lot of our youth athletes. And I think when it comes to the younger kids, especially when you're, under that 14, 15 age, we wouldn't really start kids in the gym. We did have it cut off at 12 before, but then we have taken like a youth athlete group between 9 and 12. And we put them in small groups, but we just really make it fun. And we try to focus on running, sprinting, jumping, throwing, just different coordination things. Because at that age, you can focus on technique, but you just want them to be able to run fast, jump high, and throw things as far as you can. So whether it's in your garden, I mean, in your house, you got to watch what you're throwing, but in your garden, just work on running, jumping, and throwing. And those are the three things that I would say you can't go miss with.
Great. I think this is the last one in the chat. So if anyone else wants a question, just write and we'll come and unmute you rather than hearing my voice constantly. So from Amy, at what stage did you realize that you could take your game to the next level? Was it something inside you or the people around you?
I think going back, I think it was, growing up in Scotland, when I was saying before, there just wasn't the competition in the leagues. And I think as I started to progress, my dad was coaching in what would be the second British league now in Paisley. And I was able to practice with that team, even though it was at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday and Thursday night, because a lot of the guys were working. But I could really start to see at that 13, 14 range that I'd outgrown the hockey in Scotland, because playing with kids my own age group, I was scoring, quite a lot of goals a game. And I knew that I had to move to North America to try and take my game to the next level. So I would say at that point, that was that stage. And then when I said before, when I moved to Cleveland, Ohio, the second year in Cleveland, that's the year that I got drafted, and then I got a scholarship that year. And also I led the league in scoring. So that year was a year that I felt like I took the next step. And then my first year that I played in college, because I wasn't sure, that's a big step to go from junior to college hockey. And I had 29 goals my first year in college. And I felt like, okay, because I wasn't sure going in. I was a big junior prospect, got drafted, but it's a big, big jump. And then that was kind of when I was like, okay, I belong at this level, and I can make a real go at becoming a pro if I focus in on the next couple of years. So I did that. But then I had a really bad first year pro experience in the East Coast League, and I just didn't put up good numbers. And coming out of college, if you're a prospect and you're trying to get from the East Coast to the American Hockey League, you have to put up good numbers if you want to get called up. And I just didn't do that. And I think if I had maybe gotten off to a better start that year, I could have possibly got to the American Hockey League, but it didn't happen. And but I knew I could always be a solid pro. And I was very fortunate that being from Scotland and having contacts in the UK and Belfast, I knew I could always come back to the UK league to fall back on. But my number one goal was always to try and make it to the NHL. And I feel like I gave that a good shot, and I have no regrets as far as that went.
Okay, I have Ken wanting to ask a question here.
Hi, hello, Colin. Great presentation, but I had a question about something, that concerns me for the players. In terms, you know that restrictions have uh, really impacted the players here in Ireland more than in other countries where kids still kind of keep on training and other players. But in Ireland, it has completely stopped. Maybe in September we had a month of training, but that's pretty much it. And my concern comes as to when they will come back after such a long time of inactivity. So it's going to be about a year now. And so when they will return, I'm more concerned about some players wanting to move too fast. And I would like to get your point of view on how they could be avoiding possible injuries when they get back to competition and training, and what they can do.
Yeah, I think the biggest, I mean, this is like completely unprecedented time. I mean, I can't even imagine, and this is probably the toughest time, not only for business owners like myself or for, adults, but for kids who are trying to become hockey players or golfers or footballers. I mean, this is a crazy time. But as I was saying earlier, I think the key is to don't waste the time, because you cannot get this time back. So there's no point in saying, I'm not going to train today. I'll just do it tomorrow. It's like, well, you're stuck at home, but you got to make the best of you got to make the best of a shitty situation. If you don't have the best of everything, make the best of everything you have. If you have a room the size of this, there's still enough to do a workout, to do something. If you guys are mostly roller hockey players, and I know you are, so I'm not sure whether you can even go outside and roller skate or rollerblade, but you have to be doing something, and you have to try and not only maintain where you are. Maintaining where you are is probably not good enough, because if you're not going this way, you're going this way. Yeah, the graph to success is a lot of like this, there's a lot of ups and downs, but you got to try and keep it going in this direction. And by just sitting around doing nothing, it's just not good enough. If you want to be better and you want to be a better athlete, you have to be doing the stuff that I've been talking about. You have to be doing your stretching. You have to be doing your mobility, strength training, running, jumping. The younger kids that are in here, that if you're only 10 or whatever age you are, just run, jump, throw, like do anything that you can that's going to help your skills. Shoot pucks, get outside. If you can't get outside, work on your stick handling inside. Yeah, when you get back to the court or on the ice, that could be an issue if you haven't been skating as much. So I would say, if you can get out on the rollerblades outside anywhere, and you maybe can't do the sprints, but maybe you can do some sort of conditioning, but it's just do something. Something is better than nothing usually. And then I think you just have to understand, I think you just have to make sure that when it does get back onto the ice or onto the court, that people understand, like, hey, it's a process. It's not just going to happen overnight. We maybe haven't been practicing or playing in a year. So let's put together a plan, which I'm sure you will, to get us from whenever it is, from July to September. And it's going to have to be trying to increase to get better each day. It's not just going to be from July to September. You're going to have to go, there's going to be some of this up and down, but as long as it's moving in the right direction. But you just have to try and stick to it and make sure you put a plan together, whether it's as individuals or as a team, and say, okay, like, let's just make sure when we come back, we know it's not going to be easy, but we're going to do our own part to help the group as well. Because, if you're part of a team, you have a responsibility not only to yourself, but to your teammate. Because it's no good to your teammate if he's going out and he's doing all this work and taking care of himself, and then you're not doing anything. And then when it comes to the game, he's relying on you to make a big save or to get the puck out or to score a goal. And all of a sudden you're lollygagging around because you haven't done anything in the last 6 months. So I think it's important to understand, to try and do a little bit each day and just trying to get better. Don't let the time pass you by, because you won't get it back. Because everyone's going to be a year older, 6 months older. And that 6 months or a year that you could have used this opportunity to get stronger, to get faster. I mean, unless you live in an apartment building, you're not allowed to leave the apartment. Or you live on a motorway, everyone can go out and run sprints. And trust me, if you go out and run sprints, 5 to 8 sprints, 30 meters, 3 to 4 times a week, and you go 100% full out for that 30 meters, I'm not big at giving guarantees, but I can almost guarantee you in a month from now, 2 months from now, if you do that 3 times a week, 4 times a week, as fast as you can, then you're going to be faster. I mean, you want to run fast, be faster runner, run fast. It's not, you want to be stronger, lift weights. It's not, I mean, there is science behind it, but just don't let the time pass you by. Don't think, all right, the restrictions are going to be lifted in 2 weeks. Oh shit, I haven't done anything. Use the time now. Put the phone down for 30 minutes, turn off the gaming computer. I mean, even if it's something as simple as saying, okay, I can only do 10 press ups at a time. Well, okay, well, that's fine. You can do 10, but by the end of the month, I want to be able to do 15. By the end of the month, I want to do 20. Well, how are you going to be able to do more press ups? Do more press ups. So just say, okay, put the phone down for 10 minutes. Just start knocking out some press ups. Do 5 sets of, 3 sets of 10 and another 2 sets of 7 or 8, as many as you get. So I think it's important to just do little bits every day to try and work on the things you want to work on. And then when you all come back as a group, then hopefully you won't be as far behind as you think. But I think when you do get back on the court, on the skates, I think it's going to be an understanding like, hey, this is going to be a little bit tricky for the first part. And we're going to have to put a plan together to get us from here to get us to there. Because you're not going to feel as good as you did before. And I think mentally you just have to be prepared for that. And not as, individuals and also coaches, but also, for yourself, just don't, if you go to the first practice, you're like, man, I feel terrible. Yeah, you probably are going to feel terrible. But the more stuff you do now, the better you're going to feel, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I want to go to PJ next.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you now.
Cool. About food before games, but I suppose I think you kind of covered that by just saying eat clean. Like good nutrition should be enough motivation between a game. But when would you have like your last biggest meal or your last intake of sugar?
Yeah, so in an ideal world, depending on how you feel, like some people I know like hate eating meals. When I was playing professional, we would have our pregame meal for a 7 o'clock game. We'd have a big, usually pasta and chicken. I think I've had pasta one time in the last year and a half because I ate pasta and chicken for 30 years. And I was like, I'm never eating pasta again. But it is good for getting carbs and then getting protein from your chicken. But we would normally eat a pregame meal at between 1 and 1:30. But we would also be getting to the rink at 4:30. So you'd maybe have like a nice big pasta meal with chicken, and then take a nap or rest up, or if we had to travel from, Nottingham to Sheffield or wherever, and then get to the game, say at 4:30. But we would have quite a long time to warm up and stretch, and obviously a full warm up, and then come back off the ice. But I would always try and have something once I got to the rink as well, whether it was a bagel or I was going to say a sandwich, but like say a toast and peanut butter, something with a little bit of sugar, but not too much. You don't want to be pounding, I'm going to use Twix. You don't want to be eating a Twix bar because then about 30, 40 minutes later, you're going to be like, oh. So you want to making sure you're getting something good, whether it's an energy bar, not too high in sugar, something like peanut butter on toast, jam even. I would maybe have that when I got to the rink about 5 o'clock. And then it's kind of up to you once the game starts. I would try and drink water during the game. You can have maybe like, I would stay away from really heavy sugary Lucozade type drinks. There's lots of in-game supplements like you can have now, the expensive one, BioSteel, or there's ones that have like amino acids and help aid recovery, electrolytes, something along those lines. And then depending how long the game is, you might want to have something in the intermission. Something along, I would sometimes have a banana, or if you had a protein bar, or perhaps a recovery shake, depending on how your stomach is. Some guys wouldn't be able to, if you have like half a protein shake in between periods, you feel like you're burping up the whole game. But I do think it is good to eat something big early on, but obviously not like there's a difference. I don't mean like having soup, pasta, chicken, and a dessert. I mean like a good balanced meal. And then obviously giving that lots of time for that to settle and digest, and then you'll store all that energy for later anyway. But then maybe just topping that up once closer to the game, depending on how you feel that you can stomach, something in your stomach right before the game.
the thing with the games for us over here, a lot of us are just inline players. So for ice, we get 5 minutes. If you're lucky.
Yeah.
Between periods. So a whole, like, you barely get your breath back. Never mind get banana.
Yeah.
But on game days, we could have as much as little as an hour up to 2, worst case scenario, 3 hours between games. If you've got juniors, what's the best thing you can do for them? Like, where's the time when they come off the rink? Do you say, right, eat some Jaffa cakes, get a little bit of sugar in you, or is it just water between games? Or what's a bit of advice for guys waiting for the next game? Like, what's the best way to kind of get your food or your drinks in, or is it just better to kind of just little is more?
No, I think if you're playing something like 2 or 3 games a week, and I was giving you the perfect case scenario where we were playing a home game. I mean, there's times where we would, our bus would leave the Belfast at like 9 in the morning, then we'd sit in a ferry for 3 hours, and then we'd get on a bus for another 4 hours, and then arrive at the rink and have 15 minutes to get ready to go on the ice in Dundee. So, you know, that would be almost like a worst case scenario. So where you're trying to pick something to eat in between there, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, am I eating on the ferry? And then you're stopping at a petrol station, you know, and getting a coffee, you know, on the way. So I think it's just trying to pick something that not only that you like, as you say, you don't want to just be pounding chocolate bars, but you don't want to have nothing. But then at the same time, you know, if for kids that are a little bit older, if you can find some sort of like a protein shake or just something, even if it's like a sandwich, I would usually say stay away from sandwiches. But if you only have an hour in between games and you can stomach a sandwich, just getting something in, because if you played a full game and all you're drinking after is water, it's probably not going to be enough. By the time the second game comes along, you're going to be kind of gassing out a little bit. So I think it's important to get something. And obviously something closer to the nutritional side would be best. But, you know, stuff like peanut butter sandwiches, as long as you're not allergic to peanut butter or anything like that. You know, like a jam sandwich, something with a bit of sugar. Yeah, because you do want to replace those sugar stores. But yeah, you want to try and get a bit of protein in there, even if it's carbs too. But they're just trying to keep it as cleaner as possible. But I do understand it's not always the perfect case scenario. And then literally, I mean, there's been times where, you know, going back to when I played in the States and Canada, where the games went to overtime and they brought in pizzas in between periods because there's not, you know what I mean? Like we only had bananas and fruit and stuff for in between the periods of the regular game. And all of a sudden now we're going to 2 overtimes. It's like, oh, you know, so they're bringing in and you're eating like a slice of pizza between the games. So, you know, I mean, when I was younger, we were eating stuff like McDonald's between the games. When I say younger, when I was like 12 years old, you go to McDonald's between the games. But, you know, it's just about trying to make sensible choices. I'm not saying you can't ever eat McDonald's, but I'm saying if you only have an hour between games and you can get like a wrap or something, it's better than having a Big Mac. Or, you know, as you say, you can get like a protein shake or something a little bit better in you, then that's going to be better. But yeah, I would say you do want to get something depending on what you can stomach. Everyone's different. You know, some guys don't like having something right before the game, but yeah, that's a good point.
When you're playing with these teams, would they be advising you what to drink and eat and when, or is it just completely down to the player themselves?
Well, at the level we were at with the Giants, and then the more professional you get, if you watch the NHL stuff like 24/7 or some of those road to the Winter Classic, like those guys are getting everything on a complete plate for them. You know, their meals are all planned. Everything's there for them. If they want something, you know, they just snap their fingers and it's pretty much there for them. And as you obviously come down the levels, you're a little bit more on your own to figure things out. You know, when we had home games with the Giants, you would eat, they maybe have like bananas or bagels in the locker room, but as far as your pregame meal, you'd be eating that at home. And you would be on your own. And then as things got better, my first years with the Giants, after games, they bring in pizzas, you know, and then you eat pizza after the game. And then my last couple of years, thanks to guys like James and Mark Brooks and obviously Adam and some of the other people in charge, you know, they started to get a bit more professional meals where you're getting catered meals with pasta and chicken and rice and things like that. But then as far as on the road, depending on the schedule, like if we were flying to East Midlands Airport and staying at a hotel to play Nottingham, They maybe have a meal, maybe provide a meal for us at the hotel. But say you were playing that game against Dundee and you were on the ferry all day and then taking the bus, like you're going to be on your own. So you have to plan accordingly where I would perhaps maybe the night before, if we were having something for dinner, I'd make an extra portion and then put it in a Tupperware. And then on the boat, if you've ever taken the Stena line, you're looking at fish and chips and burgers. So you maybe have your Tupperware and they have the microwave there, and you'd have to heat your own meal and then that. But that's what it takes if you want to be successful. Yeah, there's maybe one time where I didn't take a meal and I had a fish supper for lunch and I scored 2 goals. But realistically speaking, that's not saying that's luck, but it's not going to happen every time. It's almost like, you hear stories about the time where a certain footballer or a golfer had 10 beers the night before a game or a match and he played his lights out. But if you did that every time, it's not going to work. So you just have to try and do the right things as much as possible. So just try and prepare. And if you have the opportunity to make some food or bring something, then do that. But if you don't, then it's just about making the best choice of the options you have.
Just for a fun one, what's the worst food mistake you've ever made, like around a game? Have you ever accidentally gone, geez, I'm having myself a chocolate shake between periods? Or have you always been so disciplined?
Oh, no. When I say the amount of times I've forgotten my food, I played probably close to, I don't know, with pro and GB games, like probably close to over 1,000 games. And, in the Elite League season, you're playing like 70, 80 games. So, there's times where you're just like, you play a game Saturday night and then you're like, oh, flip, I didn't get any food for tomorrow. We're taking the ferry at 9 a.m. So then you're just like, well, I guess I'll get something on the ferry. And then literally, it'd be multiple guys, because I thought I was pretty disciplined and I would always try and take care of myself. But I played with guys who literally don't even, nutrition would be so far down the scale for them that they would just be getting food on the ferry all the time. And I remember Rob Sandrock, some of you guys might know him. He went full fish and chips. Like the year we won the league in 2013-14, I think one of the early trips, he didn't bring food and he's like, I'm getting fish and chips. And then we won the game and he must have scored. And I think the next 4 or 5 times he was getting fish and chips every meal on the boat. But I don't know. I felt like I would always try and make a good decision. But yeah, and then other guys like Jeffrey Swez, I've never seen a guy eat as much food as that guy. We would start, a lot of times we're traveling, say, to play in, I don't know, Glasgow or wherever, and we'd stop to get food, and he'd be at Marks and Spencer's, a little quick one there, and he would come out with, he'd have the chicken wings platter bowl thing there, and he'd have a sandwich, and he'd have a packet of crisps, and he would just be munching like a full, and I'm talking at like 4:30, and the game's at 7, and he's eating like 20 chicken wings, and it just, so some guys can do it, and other guys just can't, and but it's interesting to see just how different people's body react. But I think if you try and continue to do the right things, eventually it may not pay off the second game of the year or the third game of the year, but it's going to pay off. And it may not pay off this year, but by the time you're older, you're in that routine, and it's going to pay off with your health and your fitness and your conditioning. And once you're old, like me, you're going to be in a routine where you feel that your body feels better. My body would be sore, all the time now, and I still try and do mobility and stretching, but just 30 years of traveling and just a constant battle of playing, it wears on you. So, it's just important to just try and do little small things that always pay off in the end.
Cool talking to you, bud. Thanks for that.
No problem. Thank you.
So we have a few more in
that's fine. Yeah.
Chat now. So from Toby, what's been your worst injury and how long was your recovery?
Well, I've broken pretty much. I was actually pretty lucky, I would say, as far as knees and shoulders seem to be the recurring one that guys seem to get quite a lot. But I've broken not every bone, but I broke my wrist, hands, ribs, broke my ankle, broke my foot a bunch of times, broke my fingers. You seem to get your fingers broken a lot, or just, lots of slashes and things. But and then I hurt my back about 10 or 11 years ago, just in a freak kind of disc injury, just kind of tweaked it. And It's just recurring now where it's a daily battle to just try and maintain mobility and not feel crappy. But I would say the worst injury, the most scary one I had was my eye injury. So I don't know if anybody goes to the Giants, but I got a pretty big scar like under my eye here. And I was driving the net and on a backdoor trying to get a goal, and the defenseman intercepted the puck, and he tried to clear it, but like pitchfork like this. I don't know. He was almost like he was trying to put it in the back row of the stands. But imagine like a full pitchfork, and I was driving the net unsuspecting, and the stick came up, and it was literally the end of the stick hit my eye like this. So probably the bone below here saved my eye, but the toe of the stick like pushed my eye back in, and it damaged a lot of the muscles in the back of my eye. But it was pretty much the scariest moment that I've ever had. It was almost like someone took a baseball bat to your face. And I knew right away it was pretty bad. It just, everything went black. And but that was my last year playing, and I missed, I think that was the longest I ever missed. I missed probably, I think I missed about 3 months, and it just felt like I couldn't, even now there's lots of little drills you can do for training your eyes. They're kind of fun if you guys are bored. I'm sure you're bored now, but on YouTube, different things with like pens to train your eyes. And I still do them sometimes, and I can see this one eye still doesn't work quite as well. And for probably a good couple months, if I did this or tried to look left or right with this right eye, it wouldn't follow. It just completely looked straight forward. So if I covered this one and tried to move it around, it would get sore and you'd get a bit of a headache. So, but that was probably the worst one as far as just emotionally and having to deal with it.
It was scary.
Yeah. It was. I'm not sending you any pictures of that, but my face was like.
From Karen here, any tips for dealing with anxiety around training?
As far as the way you feel about it, or just the way that you are like nervous? You mean nervous about a training session? Is that what you would mean about that? I guess as I say, you just gotta try and. If it's nervous about training on the ice, then I think you just got to trust the fact that you're already there. As I said before, you've done all the work. You're at the training. If it's an Ireland training session, you've been picked to be at that training camp. So you have to trust that you've done all the practice. You've worked out. You've worked on your skills. You're already good enough. The coaches already think you're good enough to be there. Now you just have to prove it by going out there and doing it. So it's almost, as I say, trying to find that balance between being relaxed but also still having the intensity and still having the drive to do well. But I think just be confident. I think even for me as a player, I think I would get down on myself quite a lot, and if I had a bad game or bad shift, I'd really let my head drop. And looking back, I think you can't worry about something that's happened, a bad shift or in a practice, you make a bad pass, it's over. It's gone. You can't change it. The only thing you can do is learn from mistakes, but you can't dwell on them and think like, oh my God, last time I was here, I messed up this play. And, what if I mess it up again? Well, it doesn't matter. You just got to keep practicing, keep showing up. But as far as that goes, and then if it was anxiety about training, as far as working out, if you're feeling anxious about training, then maybe you're saying maybe like if you feel sick or something, then you just maybe got to adjust maybe your eating before training. Like if you feel sick all the time and you're going to work out, then maybe adjust what you're eating before the workout. And if you're getting sick every time you work out, then you're maybe doing too much of something and not enough of something else, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. One from Amy here. What's the best way to juggle academics at college level while maintaining high intensity training?
Yeah, great question. Nutrition, sleep, just trying to prioritize, just try to accomplish small tasks. I try to do that a little bit. I think back when I was in college, I was from the moment I went to Canada, even before that, I just wanted to play hockey. Like school was a second thing to me. And I'm honest about that when people ask me. And I do wish I'd focused more on the school aspect now, even though I'm sort of on the right track with what I'm doing now. But I do think you have to just prioritize things and say, okay, well, I'm a big one for lists. And even now during a lockdown, this is actually a good point. As far as during a lockdown, I think making yourself out a schedule, whether it's for the day or for the week. I think when it comes to school and training, you have to do that, and rest and nutrition. You have to make yourself a schedule, whether you like it or not. Some people will be really big into schedules, but having a plan, if you're not planning, you're just winging it, and it's not good to wing it. Like, you can't just get up and be like, well, what am I going to do today? So if you know the day before, like, okay, well, tomorrow I've got my strength training, so I'm going to have breakfast, then I'm going to do an hour of schoolwork, and then I'm going to do my strength workout, then I'm going to have a little rest, and then say you're okay, well, at night I'm going to have dinner, then I'm going to do I'm going to play on Fortnite or whatever video games for a little bit, and then after that I'm going to do my mobility before bed. So I think it's just important to make a little list. If you're too young to make a list, then maybe you need your parents to say, okay, well, turn the phone off, you need to do this, you need to do that. But I think the older you get, you can find responsibility, and you feel better, I think, when you do have that. Because if you have a list of stuff and then you look back at it, especially right now, because it is tough to put in the day and not get distracted. Whereas if you have stuff written out and you say, okay, well, tomorrow I'm going to do my sprints. Okay, well, when am I going to do my sprints? Well, don't think, oh, I'm getting up and say, well, I'm going to do my sprints at some point today. Well, no, I'm going to do my schoolwork for an hour, and then I'm going to do my sprints, and then I'm going to have my lunch, and then I'm going to walk the dog, and then go back to my schoolwork. So I think it's important to prioritize the things and then make time. You have to make time for everything. And then if you do that, it's going to be a lot easier to accomplish that. And then you can check it off. And once you get into that routine, same with working out. You can't just be like, all right, I'm going to work out 3 times this week. And then you're like, I'm not going to do it today. Where okay, Monday, I'm working out between 10 and 12, whatever the time is. I think that's definitely key, is to prioritize and then just not juggle too many things at once, if that makes sense. Like, if you've got 4 different subjects, just be like, all right, tomorrow I'm just doing the one. Like, the next day I'm just doing the one. Like, just try and focus on one thing, and whether maybe that works for you, or maybe you try and do 30 minutes of each, and then you do your training after that.
Okay, the last one in the chat from Arthur. Can you eat junk food once a week?
Yeah, so I mean, I like to use 80-20, right? So 80% of the time try and eat well, and 20% try and, just eat a little bit more of what you want. So you can go Monday to Friday. I know that's not 80%, 20% for your math wizards there, but try and just balance it out. So you can maybe have one day where you just want to eat whatever you want, whether, even if it's today, 80% of what you're eating today is going to be good, and then 20% might be, not quite as good. You might have ice cream, or maybe, as I said before, maybe you like to have a Coke and a packet of crisps. Or if before you had 4 Cokes and 4 packets of crisps, all right, well, that's probably not 80-20. You're probably eating 50% rubbish and then 50% good. So yeah, you can't, it's just trying to be responsible and eat like an adult, but I just make good choices. Like, trust me, I have crisps, I have adult beverages from time to time. I'm not saying that I eat perfectly clean, but I work out every day. And I would say I probably eat 90% of the time well and 10% not. So, you'll start to see where your balance is, and then what you feel like you can improve, and just make conscious choices. I think that's the biggest thing.
I had one other one noted down. What would be sort of the key things players should be doing in terms of off-rink warm-up?
Oh, that was one thing we didn't actually touch on. So before, there's a lot of different research as to what you should do before. I would always like to do a little bit of active mobility work. So not a lot of static stretching, some static stretching, but a little bit of active mobility. And then some sort of dynamic warm-up. If I was to go really basic, like high knees, butt kicks, skipping, maybe a few jumps, even a few push-ups, a couple sprints. That would kind of be like a vague thing on my warm-up. It's just depending as well where you're at. Like, as I was saying before, when we would travel, sometimes you travel to Dundee and they'd be like, all right, you're on the ice in 15 minutes. It's like, well, it would take me 15 minutes to do my stretching, my mobility, my dynamic warm up, and some power, some jumps and stuff. And all of a sudden I've got 5 minutes to do that stuff. So you just have to use the time you've got best. But I do think it's important you don't really want to, if you've only got 5 minutes on the court to do your team warm up, you don't want to be getting on the court and doing all your stretching and stuff there. You definitely want to be doing some sort of off court or off ice warm up prior to that, whether it's a little bit of mobility, a little bit of high knees, butt kicks, real simple, even if it's a little 5-minute jog. But I would go on the case of you're better to do 2 sets of 5 jumps, a set of 10 push-ups and 3 sprints, as opposed to jogging around the car park slowly 5 times, if that makes sense. So yeah, your jogging is going to warm your heart rate up, but you want to be explosive, you want to be powerful and fast when the game starts. So there's no point in running all slow. Yeah, you might be a little bit warmer, but you got to think, you want to be snappy, you want to be running fast, jumping. So so I would say use the time wisely, but definitely do something. Don't just throw your kit on and go out there and start. It always bugs me too, because whenever I see when you see pro NHL players, if you guys watch NHL tonight, it shows highlights and warm up. You see the players stretching them there. They've got no helmet on, just skating around all slow, warming up. But they have a 20-minute warm up. I think the NHL might be 15. But the Giants, we had a 20-minute warm up. You can't skate around fast for 20 minutes. But then you go watch a kids game and they have a 5-minute warm up and the kids are there stretching out on the ice and laying around. It's like, do that before. You just got out there. You only got 5 minutes. Like, get going. Like, do some sprints. Like, shoot some pucks. Like, do some passing. Like, get ready for the game. You're wasting 2 minutes stretching on the ice. So, just try and use the time wisely and just get yourself primed and get ready to get out there.
Cheers. And if there's no other questions in the chat, one final one. Do you think we'll ever see you on the wheels?
I don't really feel like you've seen me on skates again. I don't know. I don't know if James would probably laugh. Is James still in here? I just got all my teeth fixed after I guess losing a bunch of teeth would probably be a bad hockey injury, but I got all my teeth fixed. I got all new teeth after I retired from hockey. So I'd have to wear a full face cage if that was possible. But I was just going to ask you, Michael, while everyone's in here, like, you can maybe take a vote or you can let me know, like, if I made out like if I wrote out kind of what I was talking about with the strength training, mobility, and then a few ideas with some links, would that be something you guys would want? Or
yeah, absolutely. Even for myself as an individual, be highly sought after, and I know lots of guys want to work hard and improve their fitness, but maybe they knowing stuff in our sports, maybe not doing the right things and stuff like that. So
I can so I'll write out a little bit tomorrow of kind of the bullet points of what we're talking about as far as maybe the strength work and the mobility and the sprinting. And then I've got a couple of little home workouts I can send you guys there, which has got the links to the YouTube channel. Maybe just give you some ideas of some stuff you can do at home too.
Great, thanks. So we'll wrap it up. It was a really insightful, really dulled down for dummies like me to understand where we're coming from in terms of fitness and nutrition. So thanks everyone for staying with us as well. It was quite a long one, but everyone seemed engaged. So thanks again for coming on, and we hope to chat again soon.
Yeah, you're welcome, guys. Hope that was okay. Probably a little bit long, as I said, but I'll send you my email too, Michael, and if anyone has any questions. Well, you have my email, but I'll put it on the bottom of the document, and then if anyone has any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll try and answer it as best I can.
Perfect.